In the case of the United States, is Taiwan a state? The answer is no. To explain this complicated situation, let's go to the map. So originally in the early 1900s, the early 20th century, Taiwan, or the Nationalist Party that became Taiwan, and Communist Party in China didn't like each other. But they said, you know what, let's get together against our common enemy, Japan. So the two parties cooperated with each other. Then after World War II, of course, they then no longer cooperate, as no longer are they fighting Japan. And so what ended up happening was the Communist Party, which was supported by Mao Zedong, for those in the history class, who know their history well, essentially were more of a rural group, whereas the nationalists a little bit more urban, a little higher educated, a little bit more business elites, let's say. And so what ended up happening was essentially the Communist Party chased or ran the Nationalist Party off the mainland of China to Taiwan, where the Nationalist Party set up the Taiwanese government. Now, Taiwan says they are their own country, but China, the Communist Party, what they do is essentially just view Taiwan as a wayward province. Oh, they're just, exist in the United States. Oh, Texas all of a sudden decided to kind of secede. Yeah, well, whatever. They're just kind of gone loopy. They'll be back. And so Taiwan says, no, we are our own individual state. Where this gets complicated, if you want to do business with China, if you want to have foreign relations with China, which a lot of countries do because China is so stinking big and has so much clout in economics, and demographics, what have you. And so if you want to do business with China, you have to recognize China as a state, but you cannot recognize Taiwan. So for that reason, just a few countries actually in the world recognize Taiwan as a state. There's about 23, 24 of them. Most of them smaller Latin American, African, and Asian countries. So essentially, Taiwan is not a state because it's not internationally recognized. In the case of the United States, we do not recognize Taiwan, although we definitely have relationships with Taiwan. We definitely help them out with military, help them out with business, help them out with various things, but we do not officially recognize them as a state. The governing body of the Olympic Games also doesn't recognize Taiwan as an individual state. So instead of Taiwan using the flag that we saw in the previous image, they use this flag here. Further, they can't be called Taiwan. They're called Chinese Taipei. And so the Olympics, recognizing once again, if you want China to compete in your games, if you want China to host your events, then you cannot recognize Taiwan as an independent state. But nonetheless, Taiwan does compete on their own, separate from China, but they compete as Chinese Taipei, using this flag, which is not their flag that you'd find in Taiwan. Further, this was complicated in the 2008 Olympics. And so one of the things that happens in the run-up to the Olympic Games is the Olympic torch, goes all throughout the world. What the Chinese wanted, what the state of China, the Communist Party, what they wanted was a torch to go from a Chinese province to Taiwan, back to another Chinese province. Kind of as if, okay, this torch relay was going to then go to this Chinese province segment of the tour. Whereas the Taiwanese said, no, we want the Olympic torch to go from a sovereign country, for example, South Korea, to Taiwan, to another sovereign country, for example, Indonesia, to showcase, okay, we are our own state, just like all those other states, South Korea, Indonesia, what have you. What ended up happening, the torch didn't even go to Taiwan. Further, there was fear during the Olympic Games, during the opening ceremonies, that when every team comes in there with their flag and everyone follows in wearing the cute little outfits, the fear was for the Chinese, for the mainland Chinese, was that at the last minute, the Taiwanese would switch out this flag and put up the flag from the previous image, and then that would be very symbolic to have the Taiwanese flying during the most, the biggest spectacle in Chinese, global sport history. To have that flag flying would be quite symbolic.